was a 10-year-old boy, small in stature but with a heart that seemed to radiate warmth and kindness in ways few people noticed at first glance. Living with his mother Sarah, in a cozy, modest apartment within a busy city neighborhood, Leo grew up learning the importance of compassion. His mother had always taught him that even the smallest act of kindness could ripple out and touch others' lives in ways they might never know. And on one cool autumn afternoon, Leo would put that lesson into action in a way neither he nor Sarah could ever have predicted. The day was quiet as Leo left his school building, his backpack bouncing against his back with each step. After a busy day of lessons and games, he decided to stop by his favorite park before heading home. He loved this small green space nestled between the towering buildings. It felt like his own little sanctuary away from the world. His mother's words always echoed in his mind. Sometimes we need to look out for others, Leo. You never know who might need a friend. So, as he walked along the tree-lined paths, Leo took in the sight of other children laughing and playing, of parents chatting on benches, and of squirrels darting around searching for food. Then, as he rounded a bend near the playground, Leo saw her, a woman he had never seen before, sitting alone on a bench. She was older, maybe in her late 50s, with gray-streaked hair that fell in unkempt waves around her face. Her clothes were worn and frayed, and she sat hunched over, her hands clutched together as if she were trying to shield herself from the cold. She looked lost, distant, as though she were in a world of her own. Leo's footsteps slowed, his curiosity piqued, and his gaze softened. The woman looked up, her weary eyes meeting his for a brief moment before she looked away. But that one moment was enough. In that fleeting glance, Leo felt something stir within him, a pull, a sense of understanding. He didn't know what her story was or why she was sitting alone on that bench, but he sensed a sadness in her eyes that he couldn't ignore. Without thinking twice, Leo reached into his backpack and pulled out the sandwich his mother had packed for him that morning. It was his favorite, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, simple but made with love. He approached the woman slowly, his small feet crunching softly on the fallen leaves. As he neared the bench, Leo took a deep breath, gathering the courage to speak to her. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice gentle but filled with the innocent confidence of a young child. "Are you hungry? Would you like my sandwich?" The woman looked up, startled, as though she hadn't noticed him approach. Her eyes, blue and tired, widened in surprise as she took in the sight of this young boy offering her his lunch. For a moment, she seemed at a loss for words, her gaze flicking between Leo's outstretched hand and his earnest expression. She hesitated, her hand reaching halfway toward the sandwich before she pulled it back. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, her voice rough and soft at the same time. "You don't need to give me your food. You're just a child. Don't you need it yourself?" Leo shook his head, smiling shyly. "It's okay, ma'am. My mom always says it's important to share. I had a big lunch at school," he added, fibbing slightly. "Please take it. I'd really like you to have it." After a moment's pause, the woman slowly reached out, her fingers trembling slightly as she accepted the sandwich. Her lips parted in a soft smile, and for the first time, Leo noticed the faint lines of hardship etched into her face. She looked down at the sandwich with a mixture of gratitude and wonder, as though she couldn't believe that anyone, especially a child, would offer her such a simple yet heartfelt gift. "Thank you, young man," she said softly, her voice choked with emotion. "You don't know what this means to me." Leo beamed, pleased to have made her smile. "My name's Leo," he said brightly. "What's your name?" The woman paused, her eyes glistening as though his question had unlocked a memory she'd forgotten. "Claire," she said finally, almost as if she were rediscovering the name herself. "My name is Claire." As she took a small, tentative bite of the sandwich, Leo sat down beside her on the bench, his legs dangling as he watched her eat. "It's nice to meet you, Claire," he said. "Why are you here by yourself?" Claire took a deep breath. the taste of the sandwich seeming to unlock a flood of emotions she'd kept buried for far too long. She looked at Leo, her eyes filled with a sadness so profound that it nearly took his breath away. "Sometimes, life just doesn't turn out the way we think it will," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "But it's kind people like you, Leo, who make it a little easier to keep going." They sat together in silence for a while, both of them watching the other children play in the park. The simple act of sharing a sandwich had bridged the gap between them, connecting two souls in a way that words could never fully express. Leo felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of peace that told him he had done something good, something important. And as he finally said goodbye to Claire and made his way home, he couldn't wait to tell his mother about his new friend. That night, as Sarah listened to Leo's story, a mixture of pride and worry filled her heart. She marveled at her son's kindness, but couldn't shake the unease that came with knowing he had approached a stranger. "Leo," she said gently, pulling him close, "I'm so proud of you for being so caring. But please remember, not everyone is as kind as you are. If you see someone in need, come tell me first, and we'll find a way to help together, okay?" Leo nodded, though he didn't fully understand his mother's caution. To him, kindness was simple. He had seen someone hungry, and he had helped. It was as natural as breathing. But Sarah knew the world was not always kind in return. And as Leo drifted off to sleep that night, she prayed that his innocence and compassion would always stay with him, untainted by the harshness of the world. Little did they know that single act of kindness would set off a series of events that would change their lives in ways they could never have foreseen. The next morning, Sarah and Leo would find themselves answering questions from the police, facing judgment from neighbors, and eventually finding themselves at the center of a story that would touch countless lives. For in Leo's simple act of kindness lay the seeds of a legacy that would grow far beyond the confines of their small home, reminding the world of the power of compassion and the incredible impact one small act can have. The morning sun crept through the curtains of Leo's bedroom, casting a warm glow over his room filled with small treasures. A collection of stones from the park, drawings taped to the walls, and a pile of books by his bedside. Leo stretched, feeling a gentle contentment lingering from the day before. He couldn't wait to tell his mother more about Claire and how happy she looked when he gave her his sandwich. He felt proud of his small gesture, a pride that seemed to fill his chest as he imagined Claire's grateful smile. Downstairs, Sarah was busy preparing breakfast, stirring a pot of oatmeal while the smell of cinnamon filled the air. As Leo came bounding into the kitchen, his eyes bright with excitement, she couldn't help but smile at his energy. Her son was growing up so fast, and every day she felt more proud of the boy he was becoming. "Good morning, Mom." Leo greeted her with a hug, his enthusiasm contagious. "I need to tell you about something amazing that happened yesterday." Sarah chuckled, setting down the spoon and giving him her full attention. "Oh, and what's that, sweetheart?" Leo took a deep breath, his words tumbling out in a rush as he recounted his encounter with Claire, describing every detail, her worn-out clothes, the way her eyes lit up when he offered her his sandwich, and how she told him that his kindness had made her day. Sarah listened closely, her heart swelling with pride, yet tinged with a hint of worry. She could see how much this encounter had meant to Leo, and she admired the empathy and courage he had shown. But she also knew the world could be a harsh place, especially for someone as open-hearted as her son. As Leo finished his story, Sarah placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, pulling him close. "Leo, I'm so proud of you for being so caring," she said softly, looking into his eyes. "It's not every day that someone your age shows so much kindness to a stranger. But I also need you to understand something. Not everyone in this world is as good as you are. Sometimes people are hurt, and sometimes they've lost their way, like Claire." Leo's brow furrowed slightly, trying to grasp the weight of his mother's words. "But Mom," he said, his voice small but insistent. She looked so sad. She didn't have anyone, and I just wanted to help her. Sarah smiled, understanding his innocence and sincerity. I know, honey, and I love that about you. But next time, if you see someone in need, come tell me first, okay? That way, we can help them together. It's safer that way. Leo nodded, though he didn't fully understand why his mother seemed so concerned. To him, kindness was simple. He had seen someone in need, and he had helped. It felt as natural as breathing. But Sarah's motherly instinct made her cautious. The world was not always so kind, and she wanted to protect her son from its harsher realities. Yet, as she looked into his eager eyes, she felt a mixture of pride and anxiety. Leo's heart was pure, and she feared that one day, the world might try to take that innocence away. That night, after tucking Leo into bed, Sarah sat alone in the quiet of their living room, her mind replaying his story. She couldn't shake the image of the woman he had described, a stranger alone in the park, touched by a child's small yet meaningful gesture. Sarah wondered what Claire's story was, what hardships had led her to that bench in the park, and why a simple sandwich had meant so much to her. As she sat there, Sarah thought about all the lessons she had tried to instill in Leo, lessons of kindness, empathy, and compassion. She had wanted him to grow up with a strong sense of right and wrong, to see the world as a place where even small actions could make a big difference. Yet, she also knew that the world could be unforgiving, especially to those who chose to help others without hesitation. Sarah sighed, feeling the weight of single parenthood press down on her. It was moments like these that made her question if she was teaching Leo the right balance between kindness and caution. The next morning, as they sat together at the kitchen table, Leo couldn't stop talking about Claire. He wondered aloud if she would be at the park again, if he might see her and perhaps bring her another sandwich. Sarah listened patiently, nodding as he chattered, but her concern grew with each word. She was happy that her son had found joy in helping someone, but she worried about what other people might say or think if they saw him interacting with someone they deemed different. Later that day, as she dropped Leo off at school, Sarah noticed the curious glances from some of the other parents, their eyes lingering a bit too long on her and her son. She felt a pang of discomfort, sensing that they might have overheard parts of Leo's story from him or from other children. The last thing she wanted was for her son's kindness to become a topic of gossip. That evening, as they prepared for bed, Sarah pulled Leo aside, kneeling down so she could look him directly in the eye. "Leo," she began, her voice gentle yet firm. "I want you to know that you did a wonderful thing by helping Claire. You showed kindness that not everyone would have shown. But sometimes, people don't always understand why we help others. Some people might even judge you for it. Do you understand what I mean?" Leo looked at her, his face serious as he tried to process her words. "You mean some people don't think I should have helped her?" Sarah nodded, feeling a lump form in her throat. "Yes, sweetheart. Some people might think that helping a stranger isn't always the right thing to do. But I want you to remember that what you did came from your heart, and that's something to be proud of. Don't ever let anyone make you feel bad for being kind." Leo nodded slowly, his gaze steady. "I won't, Mom. I promise." As she tucked him into bed, Sarah felt a mixture of relief and lingering anxiety. She hoped that her words had reassured him, that he would hold on to his compassion without letting the world's judgment cloud his heart. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter with Claire was only the beginning, that Leo's small act of kindness would lead them down a path filled with challenges, and perhaps unexpected blessings. In the days that followed, Leo continued to talk about Claire, wondering aloud if she was doing okay, if she had found a place to sleep, or if she was still sitting on that bench in the park. His concern was touching, and each time he spoke of her, Sarah felt both proud and fearful. She wanted her son to retain his big-hearted nature, but she also wished she could shield him from the complexities of the world. It wasn't long before Sarah's fears were realized in a way she hadn't anticipated. Just a few days after Leo's encounter with Claire, their doorbell rang, and Sarah opened the door to find two police officers standing there, their expressions serious yet kind. Her heart skipped a beat, a mixture of worry and confusion flooding her mind as she invited them in. The officers introduced themselves, their voices gentle but purposeful as they explained that they were there to ask about Leo's interaction with a woman in the park. Sarah's heart pounded as she listened, her mind racing with questions. Why were the police interested in such a simple act of kindness? What had happened to Claire? And how was her son involved? Leo, sensing the gravity of the situation, sat beside his mother, his hands folded in his lap as he listened intently. The officers explained that Claire had been reported missing by her family, that she had been struggling with memory issues, and that Leo's small act of kindness had triggered something profound within her, something that had led her to remember fragments of her past. They thanked Leo for his compassion, but Sarah could tell that this was only the beginning of something far bigger than they had imagined. As the officers continued speaking, Sarah felt a strange mixture of emotions: pride for her son's kind heart, worry for what this new revelation might mean, and a deep, abiding sense of responsibility. She looked at Leo, her heart swelling with love, and knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, bound by the strength of their bond and the purity of his small yet powerful act of kindness. It was a quiet afternoon when the knock on the door startled Sarah. She had been folding laundry in the living room, enjoying a moment of peace while Leo was at school. But as she opened the door, her breath caught in her throat. Two police officers stood there, looking at her with a mix of seriousness and sympathy. Their presence sent a ripple of anxiety through her, an instinctive worry every parent feels when the unknown comes knocking. "Hello, ma'am," one of the officers began, his voice calm but firm. "Are you Sarah, Leo's mother?" Sarah nodded slowly, a hint of unease in her eyes. "Yes, that's me. Is everything okay? Did something happen to Leo?" The officer shook his head, offering a reassuring smile. "Leo is fine. We're actually here to talk about an encounter he had with a woman in the park a few days ago." Sarah's mind raced back to Leo's story about Claire, the woman he had given his sandwich to. Her chest tightened as she recalled the concern she had felt about his kindness to a stranger. And now, standing in front of these officers, her concerns felt more real than ever. "Please come in," she said, her voice slightly shaky as she led the officers into the living room. She motioned for them to sit, her mind already swirling with questions. One of the officers, a woman named Officer Rodriguez, leaned forward slightly, her gaze gentle but probing. "Sarah, we're not here to alarm you. We're just gathering some information. Your son, Leo, had an interaction with a woman in the park, correct? A woman he identified as Claire." Sarah nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and trepidation as she thought about Leo's innocent act of kindness. "Yes, he told me about her. He gave her his sandwich because she seemed hungry. Is something wrong?" The other officer, Officer Johnson, took a deep breath before continuing. "The woman Leo met, Claire, was reported missing by her family some time ago. She's been living on the streets for a while, and it seems she's been struggling with memory issues. Her family has been searching for her for months, worried sick, not knowing where she was or if she was safe." Sarah's eyes widened, her hand instinctively covering her mouth in shock. "Oh my, I had no idea. Leo didn't mention anything about her having memory issues." Officer Rodriguez nodded sympathetically. "We believe that Leo's kindness, his simple act of giving her food and speaking to her, triggered something in her memory. After their encounter, she started recalling fragments of her past, and she was able to remember enough details for us to identify her and locate her family." Sarah sat back, absorbing the weight of the officer's words. It was hard to fathom that her young son's act of kindness had not only touched a stranger's heart, but had also rekindled memories that had been lost. She felt a swell of pride for Leo, for his compassionate spirit. Yet the weight of the situation left her feeling a mixture of awe and responsibility. The officers continued, explaining that Claire had been taken to a hospital for a checkup and was now in the process of being reunited with her family. They expressed their gratitude to Sarah, emphasizing that Leo's simple gesture had changed the course of Claire's life in a way no one could have predicted. As Sarah listened, she felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. Her son, her sweet, thoughtful Leo, had unknowingly been a beacon of light in Claire's darkness. It was a profound realization, one that filled her with both pride and a new sense of responsibility. She couldn't help but think back to all the times she had taught Leo about kindness, hoping he would grow up to be a person who cared for others. Now, she saw that her lessons had taken root in a way she could never have imagined. Just then, she heard the familiar sound of Leo's footsteps bounding up the stairs. Moments later, he burst into the apartment, his backpack swinging as he called out, "Mom, I'm home!" He froze when he saw the officers sitting in the living room, his face a mix of surprise and curiosity. Sarah smiled gently, motioning for him to join them. "Come here, Leo," she said softly. "These officers wanted to talk to you about your friend Claire." Leo's eyes widened, a flicker of excitement and concern crossing his face as he walked over and sat beside his mother. The officers smiled, trying to put him at ease. "Hi, Leo," Officer Rodriguez said warmly. "I'm Officer Rodriguez, and this is Officer Johnson. We wanted to thank you for the kindness you showed to Claire. Your gesture meant a lot to her." Leo's face lit up with a shy smile. "Really? She told me she was happy when I gave her my sandwich. I didn't like seeing her so sad." Officer Johnson nodded, his voice kind. "Well, you did more than just make her happy, Leo. You helped her remember things she had forgotten, things that helped us find her family. Thanks to you, Claire is safe now, and she's going to be with her loved ones again." Leo's smile faltered, his expression growing serious as he processed the officer's words. She didn't remember her family. Sarah placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "No, honey. She was going through something hard, something that made her forget a lot of things. But because of you, she's starting to remember." Leo looked down, his small hands clasped together as he absorbed the weight of the situation. He had only wanted to help, to share what he had with someone who looked like they needed it. He hadn't expected his act of kindness to have such a big impact. It was a humbling feeling, one that left him both proud and a little overwhelmed. After a few more questions, the officers thanked Leo again and prepared to leave. As they stood at the door, Officer Rodriguez turned back to Sarah, her expression one of genuine gratitude. "Your son has a special heart, Sarah. It's rare to see someone so young show such compassion. You've done a wonderful job raising him." Sarah's heart swelled with emotion as she thanked the officers, closing the door behind them. For a few moments, she stood there, feeling a mixture of pride, gratitude, and awe. She had always known that Leo was special, but today had shown her just how profound his impact could be. Later that evening, as they sat down for dinner, Leo couldn't stop thinking about Claire and her family. He looked up at his mother, his eyes wide with questions. "Mom, do you think Claire is okay now? Do you think she remembers everything?" Sarah smiled, reaching across the table to hold his hand. "I think she's going to be just fine, Leo. She has people who love her, and they're going to help her remember and heal. And that's all because of you." Leo smiled, a sense of peace washing over him as he realized the difference he had made. He hadn't set out to change anyone's life. He had simply followed his heart. But his mother's words resonated deeply with him, leaving him with a feeling of fulfillment he had never experienced before. As they finished their meal, Sarah took a deep breath, deciding it was time to have an important conversation with Leo. "Leo, I want you to understand something," she began, her voice calm yet earnest. "Sometimes when we show kindness to others, we may face challenges or even criticism from people who don't understand. But that doesn't mean we should stop being kind. What you did was brave, and it changed someone's life. Remember that, okay? Leo nodded, his gaze steady. I understand, Mom. I don't want to stop being kind. I want to keep helping people. Sarah smiled, feeling a surge of pride for the young man her son was becoming. Then you keep doing that, Leo, and I'll always be here to support you. That night, as Leo lay in bed, he thought about Claire and the impact he had unknowingly made on her life. He felt a new sense of purpose, a realization that even small acts could have powerful consequences. He made a silent promise to himself that he would never stop being kind, no matter what challenges he might face. With that thought, he drifted off to sleep, his heart light and his spirit strong. Meanwhile, Sarah sat alone in the quiet of the living room, reflecting on the day's events. She felt a deep sense of pride for Leo, but also a new responsibility. She knew that the path ahead might not always be easy, that their lives might change in unexpected ways because of her son's kindness. But she was ready to face whatever came their way, trusting in the strength of their bond and the goodness in Leo's heart. As she watched the city lights twinkle outside their window, Sarah knew that this was only the beginning of something bigger than both of them. Leo's act of kindness had set off a ripple effect, one that would touch lives far beyond their own. And no matter what lay ahead, she was certain that they would face it together, guided by the power of compassion and the strength of love. In the days following the police visit, word of Leo's encounter with Claire began to spread around the neighborhood. At first, it was just whispers among the parents at Leo's school, quiet conversations exchanged in passing. But soon, it seemed as though everyone in their small community had heard about the young boy who had helped a homeless woman, triggering a chain of events that led to her reunion with her family. Initially, some neighbors were moved by Leo's kindness, seeing his act as a reminder of the goodness that still existed in the world. They spoke to Sarah with admiration, telling her how inspiring it was that her son had the courage and empathy to reach out to someone in need. Leo became a small symbol of hope, a young boy with a heart big enough to bridge the distance between people who might otherwise be worlds apart. But not everyone shared this perspective. Soon, judgmental voices began to emerge, critical whispers from those who viewed Leo's act of kindness with suspicion or disapproval. Sarah started noticing subtle changes in the way some of her neighbors acted toward her. A group of mothers who used to greet her warmly now exchanged glances when she passed by, their smiles replaced by a tight-lipped politeness that felt more like silent judgment than genuine kindness. One afternoon, as Sarah waited outside the school to pick up Leo, she overheard a group of parents discussing her son's actions. They were speaking in low tones, but she caught fragments of their conversation. Words like irresponsible, unsafe, and unpredictable. Her heart sank as she realized they were talking about Leo and his encounter with Claire. She felt a surge of frustration and sadness, unable to comprehend why anyone would criticize her son for doing something good. As the days went by, the subtle glances and whispers grew more pointed. Sarah found herself on the receiving end of judgmental stares, people questioning her parenting for allowing Leo to approach a stranger in the park. Some even suggested that she was encouraging dangerous behavior, that letting her son show kindness to someone less fortunate was somehow setting a bad example. One evening, after picking Leo up from a playdate, Sarah ran into Mrs. Peterson, a neighbor known for her stern demeanor and traditional views. Mrs. Peterson greeted her with a polite but forced smile, her eyes scanning Sarah with a thinly veiled disapproval. "Hello, Sarah," Mrs. Peterson began, her voice dripping with a faux sweetness that Sarah found unsettling. "I just wanted to talk to you about the recent events with your son." Sarah forced a polite smile, her guard up. "Of course. Is there something on your mind?" Mrs. Peterson's smile tightened, her voice softening to a conspiratorial tone. "I know Leo's heart was in the right place, dear, But don't you think it might have been, well, a bit dangerous to let him interact with someone like that? I mean, we have to be careful with who we allow around our children. After all, these situations can have unexpected consequences. Sarah felt her hands clench involuntarily, a surge of defensiveness rising within her. Mrs. Peterson, Leo wasn't in any danger. He saw someone who needed help, and he did what any caring person would do. I think that's a lesson worth teaching, don't you? Mrs. Peterson's lips pressed into a thin line. Yes, of course, but we have to think about the message it sends to the other children. They might get the idea that it's safe to approach anyone they see in need, regardless of, well, certain risks. You understand, don't you? Sarah took a deep breath, her voice steady but firm. I understand that kindness is not a risk. And frankly, I'm proud of my son for doing what he did. If more people had his compassion, maybe we wouldn't need to worry so much about those risks in the first place. Mrs. Peterson's face hardened, her polite smile replaced by a look of cold disapproval. She gave a curt nod, her tone clipped. Well, I just hope you'll be more cautious in the future. We can't have our children associating with certain types of people. It sets a bad example. Without another word, Mrs. Peterson turned and walked away, leaving Sarah standing there, a storm of emotions churning inside her. She felt anger, sadness, and a deep sense of frustration. How could people be so judgmental, so unwilling to see the humanity in others? She wondered how Leo's simple act of kindness had become a point of contention, something that invited criticism instead of compassion. That night, as Sarah prepared dinner, Leo sensed the tension in her face. Mom, is everything okay? He asked, his young eyes filled with concern. Sarah hesitated, struggling to find the right words. Leo, sometimes, when we do something kind, not everyone understands it. Some people might even think we've done something wrong, even when we know in our hearts that we haven't. Leo frowned, his expression puzzled. But why would anyone think helping Claire was wrong? Sarah knelt down beside him, taking his hands in hers. Because sometimes, people are afraid of things they don't understand. They might think that helping someone who's different from us is risky or strange, but that doesn't mean we should stop being kind. Leo looked down, his brow furrowed in thought. After a moment, he looked back up, his voice quiet but firm. I don't want to stop helping people, Mom. I don't think it's wrong. Sarah's heart swelled with pride, her eyes misting over as she hugged her son tightly. And you shouldn't, Leo. Don't ever let anyone make you feel bad for doing the right thing. Over the next few days, Sarah found herself caught between her pride for Leo's compassion and the disheartening judgment from some of their neighbors. She struggled with her own emotions, questioning whether she had made the right decision in allowing Leo to express his kindness so openly. But each time she looked at him, saw the innocence and sincerity in his eyes, she felt reassured that she was raising him the right way. Meanwhile, the whispers and sideways glances continued, and Sarah learned to face them with a quiet dignity. She knew that some people would never understand the value of compassion, that they would always view kindness as something naive or even reckless, but she refused to let their opinions change her or her son's outlook on life. As the weeks went by, the story of Leo's kindness reached beyond their neighborhood, gaining attention in ways that neither Sarah nor Leo had anticipated. Local news outlets began covering the story, intrigued by the young boy whose simple act of generosity had reunited a woman with her family. Soon, reporters were reaching out, wanting to interview Sarah and Leo to hear their thoughts on the power of kindness and how one small gesture had made such a big impact. With each interview, Sarah and Leo found themselves sharing their perspective, using their platform to talk about the importance of empathy and compassion. Leo, shy at first, grew more confident with each opportunity to speak, his voice strong as he told the world that he believed in helping others, no matter who they were or where they came from. The more they shared their story, the more Sarah felt a shift in the community's response. People who had once judged them began to look at them with newfound respect. Their eyes softened with understanding. Some neighbors even approached Sarah, apologizing for their previous assumptions, admitting that Leo's story had made them reconsider their own beliefs about kindness and compassion. One day, as Sarah and Leo were returning from an interview, they ran into Mrs. Peterson outside their building. She looked at them with a hesitant expression, her usual air of superiority replaced by a hint of vulnerability. "Sarah?" she began, her tone softer than Sarah had ever heard before. I just wanted to say that I may have misjudged you and Leo. It's clear now that he's made a difference, that he's shown us all a side of kindness we sometimes forget about." Sarah smiled, her heart warming at the unexpected apology. "Thank you, Mrs. Peterson. I think we could all use a little more kindness, don't you?" Mrs. Peterson nodded, her gaze shifting to Leo. "Yes, I believe you're right. And Leo, thank you for reminding us." Leo beamed, his shy smile lighting up his face. "You're welcome, Mrs. Peterson." As they walked away, Sarah felt a renewed sense of hope, a belief that perhaps, just perhaps, Leo's act of kindness had done more than reunite a family. It had started to heal a community, to bridge the divides between people who had once seen each other as strangers. That evening, as they sat down to dinner, Sarah looked at Leo with a new appreciation, realizing that her son's simple gesture had sparked a quiet revolution of understanding and empathy. It was a reminder that even in the face of judgment and prejudice, compassion could prevail, planting seeds of change in the hearts of those who had once been closed off to it. And in that moment, Sarah knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she and Leo would continue to walk the path of kindness together, unshaken by the opinions of others, and strengthened by the knowledge that their actions, however small, could change the world around them. Several weeks passed after Leo's encounter with Claire, and life had settled into a sense of normalcy once again. However, Sarah sensed that something deeper had changed in both her and her son. Leo's heart for helping others seemed to have deepened, and Sarah felt a stronger commitment to nurture his compassion despite the challenges they had faced from the community. Little did they know, their journey was far from over. One Saturday morning, just as Sarah was finishing up breakfast preparations, there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find two people she hadn't seen before, a man and a woman, both of whom looked weary yet relieved. The man stepped forward, extending a hand. "Hello, I'm Edward Caldwell," he introduced himself, his voice warm but tinged with emotion. "And this is my wife, Catherine. We're Claire's family." Sarah felt a wave of surprise and emotion, her mind flashing back to that fateful day when Leo had offered his sandwich to Claire. She invited them in, feeling both curious and grateful for the opportunity to meet the family Leo had helped. She called for Leo, who came bounding into the room, his face lighting up when he recognized Claire's name. "Hi, Leo," Edward said, kneeling down to Leo's level, his eyes brimming with gratitude. "I just wanted to say thank you. What you did for Claire was nothing short of a miracle. We had lost hope of ever finding her. But then, because of you, she's back with us. We can't express how much that means to us." Leo smiled shyly, glancing at his mother for reassurance. "I'm glad she's okay," he said softly, a hint of pride in his voice. "I just wanted to help her. She looked like she needed a friend." Edward's wife, Catherine, stepped forward, her eyes misting over as she looked at Leo. "You gave our family back to us, Leo. Because of your kindness, Claire started to remember who she was. She's still healing, but we know she's on the right path now, and it's all thanks to you." Sarah watched the scene, her heart swelling with pride for her son. It was humbling to see how one small act of kindness had blossomed into something that brought so much joy and healing to others. As they sat together, the Caldwells shared their experiences, describing the months they had spent searching for Claire, the sleepless nights, and endless worry that had finally come to an end. Each word they spoke made Sarah's gratitude for Leo's pure heart grow. As the conversation continued, Edward's expression grew more thoughtful. "Sarah," he began, turning to her with a serious look. "Meeting Leo and seeing his selflessness has given us an idea. We'd like to do something in honor of Leo's kindness, something that could help others the way he helped us." Sarah looked at him, curious but slightly wary. "What did you have in mind?" Edward took a deep breath, his voice filled with determination. "We want to start a foundation, one that would provide resources for people dealing with memory loss, especially those who might be alone or homeless, like Claire was. We want to create a place where people like her can find help, support, and maybe even a chance to reconnect with their loved ones, and we'd like to name it the Leo Foundation for Compassion and Recovery." The room fell silent as Sarah absorbed the significance of his words. She glanced at Leo, whose eyes were wide with excitement and disbelief. The idea of starting a foundation in his name was beyond anything they could have imagined. But as she looked into her son's eyes, she saw a spark, a desire to make a difference that was too strong to ignore. "Leo," she said softly, looking at her son, "how would you feel about that?" Leo's face lit up, his voice trembling with excitement. "Can we really do that, Mom? Can we help more people like Claire?" Sarah felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes as she reached over and hugged him tightly. "Yes, sweetheart. I think we can." With that, a new chapter in their lives began. The Caldwells, along with Sarah and Leo, started working tirelessly to bring the foundation to life. They held meetings, reached out to community leaders, and gathered support from people who had been touched by Leo's story. The process was challenging, but Sarah and Leo found strength in the purpose they shared. Leo took an active role in the planning, attending meetings and brainstorming ideas with the adults. He shared his vision for the foundation, describing a place where people could find not only food and shelter, but also kindness, friendship, and a sense of belonging. Sarah marveled at her son's dedication, watching him grow more confident with each step they took. As the foundation began to take shape, they organized their first fundraising event, a community gathering to raise awareness and support for the cause. The event was held in the neighborhood park, the very place where Leo had first met Claire. Volunteers from all over the city came to lend a hand, setting up tables, arranging decorations, and preparing food. When the day of the event finally arrived, Sarah and Leo stood side by side, marveling at the crowd that had gathered to support their cause. There were families, children, and even some of the neighbors who had once questioned their actions. Seeing the community come together, Sarah felt a surge of pride and hope. Their journey had not been easy, but standing here among so many people who believed in their mission, she knew they were on the right path. As the event began, Leo took the stage, his voice shaking slightly but filled with determination as he addressed the crowd. "Thank you all for coming," he said, his eyes shining with emotion. "I didn't think that giving a sandwich to someone would turn into something like this, but I'm glad it did. I think everyone deserves kindness, no matter who they are or where they come from, and I hope this foundation will help people feel that kindness, just like Claire did." The crowd erupted in applause, and Sarah felt her heart swell with pride. She could see that Leo's words had touched everyone present, that his simple message of compassion resonated deeply with each person there. After the event, many people approached Sarah and Leo, expressing their admiration and support. Some shared their own stories of loved ones who had struggled with memory issues or homelessness, while others offered to volunteer or donate to the foundation. Sarah was overwhelmed by the outpouring of generosity, feeling as though they had tapped into a wellspring of kindness that had been waiting to be unleashed. As they packed up after the event, Edward approached Sarah and Leo, his expression one of deep gratitude. "You both have done something truly special here," he said. "This is just the beginning, but I know that together we're going to make a real difference." That night, as they returned home, Leo was too excited to sleep. He stayed up with Sarah, talking about the foundation and all the people they would be able to help. His enthusiasm was contagious, and Sarah found herself caught up in his excitement, envisioning a future where their work would change lives. Over the next few weeks, the Leo Foundation for Compassion and Recovery officially launched, and the community continued to rally around them. Donations poured in, and volunteers offered their time and resources to help build a support network for individuals facing the same struggles Claire had endured. They opened a small center in the heart of the neighborhood, a welcoming space where people could come for food, shelter, counseling, and companionship. Leo became a regular presence at the center, greeting visitors and making sure they felt welcomed. His natural warmth and empathy made him a beloved figure among both the staff and the guests, and Sarah often found herself in awe of her son's ability to connect with others on such a deep level. One evening, as they were closing up the center, Leo looked up at his mother, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Mom, do you think Claire is happy now?" he asked softly. Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with love and pride. "I think she's very happy, Leo. And I think she'd be proud of everything you've done." Leo nodded, a peaceful smile on his face. "I just want to keep helping people, Mom. I don't want anyone to feel alone." Sarah hugged him tightly, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the journey they had been on. "And that's exactly what we'll keep doing, sweetheart. As long as there are people in need, we'll be here to help." In that moment, Sarah realized that the foundation was not just a way to honor Leo's kindness. It was a testament to the power of compassion to transform lives. They had started with a simple act, a sandwich shared between a boy and a woman in need, and it had grown into something far bigger than either of them had imagined. And as they walked home under the starlit sky, Sarah knew that this was only the beginning. Leo's kindness had ignited a spark of hope that would continue to burn brightly, lighting the way for others who, like Claire, needed a reminder that they were not alone. Through their work with the foundation, Sarah and Leo had found a purpose that would guide them for years to come, and they knew, deep in their hearts, that as long as they held on to their compassion, they would always have the strength to make a difference, one small act of kindness at a time. As the months turned into years, the Leo Foundation for Compassion and Recovery grew far beyond what Sarah and Leo had ever imagined. The foundation had become a pillar of hope in the community, a place where people in need found not only food and shelter, but also friendship, support, and a renewed sense of purpose. The ripple effect of Leo's kindness continued to touch lives, inspiring people from all walks of life to come together in the spirit of compassion. Leo, now a few years older, had become a prominent figure within the foundation. He spent his weekends volunteering, interacting with visitors, and even mentoring younger volunteers. Leo's heart had not changed. He was still the kind, gentle soul who had once offered a sandwich to someone in need. But now, he understood the impact of his actions on a much deeper level, and his commitment to helping others had only grown stronger. Sarah watched her son with a mixture of pride and admiration. She had always known Leo was special, but seeing the way he inspired those around him filled her with a sense of fulfillment she hadn't thought possible. She had worried about the challenges he would face by embracing kindness so fully, but now she realized that his compassion was not a vulnerability. It was his greatest strength. One day, as Leo was giving a tour of the foundation to a group of new volunteers, he received a surprise visitor, Claire herself, looking healthier and happier than ever. She had fully regained her memory, and her life had taken a positive turn, thanks to the support of her family and the foundation. She hugged Leo tightly, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Leo," she said, her voice trembling with emotion, "you changed my life. If it weren't for your kindness, I don't know where I would be. You reminded me that even in the darkest times, there is hope. And now, I'm here to help others the way you helped me." Leo smiled, his heart swelling with happiness as he introduced Claire to the volunteers, telling her story and sharing how one simple act of kindness had brought them all together. Claire joined the foundation as a volunteer, using her own experiences to support those who were struggling, just as she once had. The foundation continued to expand its reach, launching new programs that offered job training, mental health support, and community outreach initiatives. Leo and Sarah worked tirelessly to ensure that the Foundation's mission stayed true to its roots, emphasizing empathy and dignity for every individual who walked through their doors. One evening, as Leo and Sarah sat down to review plans for the Foundation's next big event, Sarah looked at her son, her heart filled with gratitude. "Leo," she said, her voice soft, "do you realize what you've done? You've created something that's going to help so many people for years to come. Your kindness has left a legacy that will outlast both of us." Leo smiled, a mixture of humility and pride in his eyes. "It all started with a sandwich, didn't it, Mom? I just wanted to help one person, but now we're helping so many." Sarah nodded, her eyes misting over as she hugged him. "And you'll keep helping them, Leo. As long as you hold on to that kindness in your heart, you'll always make a difference." As the Foundation's work spread across the community, Leo's story began to inspire others beyond their town. People from all over reached out to Sarah and Leo, sharing how their lives had been touched by kindness and expressing a desire to support the Foundation. News outlets covered their story, and people across the country were moved by the idea that a single act of compassion could ripple out to change the lives of countless others. The Foundation launched an annual event called The Kindness Connection, where people gathered to share stories of how kindness had changed their lives. Leo would speak at these events, encouraging others to perform simple acts of compassion in their daily lives, reminding them that even the smallest gesture could have a profound impact. The event became a beloved tradition, with attendees bringing food donations, blankets, and other essentials that the Foundation distributed to those in need. Through it all, Leo remained humble, always remembering the day he met Claire and offered her a sandwich. To him, the Foundation was not about recognition. It was about making sure no one else felt alone in their struggles. It was about building a community where people cared for one another, no matter who they were or what they had been through. As Leo and Sarah walked home one evening after the annual event, they looked up at the night sky, filled with gratitude for the journey they had taken together. Their lives had changed in ways they never could have anticipated, all because of one small act of kindness. And as they gazed at the stars, they knew that their work was far from over, that there would always be people who needed a helping hand, a warm meal, or simply a reminder that someone cared. If Leo's story of kindness has touched your heart, we invite you to join us on this journey of compassion. Together, we can make the world a better place, one small act at a time. Whether it's sharing a smile, offering a helping hand, or simply being there for someone in need, your kindness can make a difference. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire and uplift. Help us spread the message of kindness by sharing this video with your friends and family, and let's keep the spirit of compassion alive in every corner of the world. Thank you for watching, and remember, even the smallest gesture can change someone's life.